So a movie I didn't even know existed until like, I don't know, 48 hours ago. Breathing In came across the Just Watch app because I have parameters set on there where I have horror and the streaming networks that I have access to, and I just click on new and it'll tell me everything released today, and I check it every day. Every day, just to keep up on all the horror titles that might try to slip on by. They might try to just swim on by me, but I grab them and I pull them out and I show them to you and see if they're worth your time.
Yes.
So, Breathing In. This is a Screambox exclusive, but it's also on Hoopla, so it's not much of an exclusive if you ask me. Because Hoopla is connected to your library.
Yeah. Hoople's great.
And for some reason, Hoopla gets every Screambox original the same day as Screambox does. I don't know. They have a deal with Screambox and Hoopla for some reason.
Mm.
So I got rid of Screambox for this very reason because they
Yeah.
only get like one movie every 4 months that seems to be worth it. And I
But
can get them on Hoopla. So
if you don't have like any other like a Shutter
yeah,
subscription or
yeah.
anything, Screambox does have a lot of horror movies. So it is a really good option if you are utilizing the library outside of like what we would do, which is just for the original movies.
And Screambox is who produced Terrifier 3,
Yeah.
and they will be getting that later uh, in the next few months, I'm sure. Anyway, so this is a South African horror film, which
Hmm.
I feel like we haven't, I don't know of a ton of them. Maybe I'd be surprised to find out some were
Hmm.
that I'm familiar with, but I nothing off the top of my head is coming to mind that's South African. Now this is based on a play, which it feels it for sure. I while we were watching this, I was like, this feels like that's how I was going to describe it.
Ah.
Was like this kind of feels like a play.
Hmm.
And then lo and behold, in the end, it was like written for the screen. So I went and looked. I was like, that must mean play, and it was. And this takes place during this Anglo Bear War or something. I know nothing about this.
Oh, okay.
They talk about that's what it says um,
In the
in
like.
the text,
Hmm.
in the end in the opening.
Oh, okay.
The opening talks about how there was a war raging on and that they were setting up concentration camps and that these were like the first concentration camps,
Hmm.
and they were taking wives and kids and like torturing and killing them for the opposing soldiers to like quit. That's what I got out of the text, right? Is I don't know anything about this war, but that's how I read it. That these guys were kidnapping the like the wives and the kids of the soldiers and basically holding them hostage, um, and being like, stop fighting or we're gonna fucking kill your kids and your wife, which is just, I mean,
Yeah.
brutal.
Awful.
That like whole adds a whole nother sick layer to war. It's
Yeah.
already sick enough, literally the worst thing ever created by man. But this is, yeah, I mean, for all intents and purposes, this is a witch movie. But it also might kind of have a vampire in it. It's interesting. This is definitely like a top five most visually striking films of the year.
Oh, for
There's some
sure.
really great visuals in this film. There's not a ton of them. We don't get a lot of that. A lot of it looks great throughout. Don't get me wrong. But there's these really like stylized, awesome shots that appear throughout the movie that are very artistic and very memorable and haunting. And I loved that stuff when we saw it. Um, and I feel like it's in here the right amount. The movie might be a little long, and it also is kind of hard to follow at times. I think purposely so.
Mm.
But overall, I thought it was really good. I think this is absolutely going to be the one of the most overlooked films of the
Oh,
year. I
for
haven't seen
sure.
anybody mention this film. If I had to liken it to anything, I would probably say it kind of reminds me of a mix. Like, I guess I could probably bring up a few films, but I think one of the more obvious ones would be like The Witch,
Yeah.
right? Because of the setting, the time period, the attention to time period accuracy, at least the feel of it anyway. And then I bring this movie up a lot, but that movie from earlier this year, You'll Never Find Me, and that
Hmm.
other one that we watched, the Veil.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely because it's kind of a
Two people, or
it's
like a couple
it's
people
a
in a
very
single
intimate
location.
setting
Yeah,
in a single location.
it's all
Yes.
like lit by candlelight.
Yes. Yeah, the period piece aspect is very much there. I'll say that I think this is like easily in my top 10 of the year.
Wow.
But could be pushing top 5. I thought it was fantastic. I think that like I mean definitely one of the standouts of the year for like no doubt. And we've already said that it's a witch movie, so I can kind of like talk about that without giving any big spoilers, but I feel like we've gotten so many cool witch films this year, and it's something that we're like constantly like, oh, witch movies like as a subgenre, it's so underutilized and all this stuff. And I think that this one like really capitalizes on it, and there's just so many genuinely scary and like not just creepy, because like there's different levels of like, oh, something's unsettling, something's creepy, like there's actually like scary moments in this that I just think were done so well. Visually, as you said, it's like very stunning. I think the performances from everybody are fantastic. My only like complaint is that we didn't watch this with subtitles. It is in English, but because there is some like old English being spoken, just words that we maybe aren't familiar with, and there's an accent situation going on, I think that we would have benefited from having
Yeah,
subtitles
yeah,
on, because I think we maybe missed some of the details. I feel like I understand everything that happened, of course, but it would have been nice to have the subtitles on if you're like me, where you have trouble maybe catching certain dialogues. When people have accents or just in general, definitely put the subtitles on for this one. Um, but yeah, I don't have any other like complaints. Like that's not the film's fault or anything, because I think that like what everyone just does such a great job, and I do think that there's some very striking and very memorable scenes and just shots from this in general.
yeah. If I guess actually, now that I'm thinking about it, if I was to liken it to any recent film that we've seen in the last like 5 years or so, I would probably liken it the most to Gretel and Hansel.
Mm,
Because that film deals with witches. It deals with a lot of striking visuals. It deals with a few characters in a very intimate location. It deals with witchcraft for a reason that we're not 100% familiar with. Now, with Gretel and Hansel, you kind of know the story already
yeah.
going into it, so you kind of have a leg up on that one. But with this one, you don't really know what's going on. So as far as like, I kind of started to get into a plot, but I never even actually got to it. You have this older witch who has like, I don't know if this has been a thing for a long time, but I've really noticed it in recent years, in
Mm,
the last like 5 years, especially ever since Gretel and Hansel's, which is what made me think of it. But the black fingers on
yeah,
like an otherwise like normal hand
they definitely
is
like signify
because
like a witch.
they did it in Agatha
Agatha all
all
along.
along.
I
They
looked
did
it
it in,
up
yeah.
to see, and I didn't look too long, but like my very first like things that I came across online were saying that this has no basis in folklore, which I think is odd.
Everyone's
I
doing
feel
it
like
now.
I mean, it's very possible that it could just be a like a stylized thing for the film from film and from like modern pop culture. But I feel like I need to look into that further, because I just think that there has to be something that's like there's some reason why people started doing it, but it is very like visually striking, and there's like something about seeing like the blackened fingertips that just makes you instantly like, I mean, like, like that's a witch, or there's like dark magic or magic is happening.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I have also noticed it like popping up much more recently.
Yeah, basically every witch I've seen in a film in the last few years, probably 75% of them have had black fingers.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know where that came from, but that's the case here. Anyways, you have an older woman who's like the witch, and then you have the younger, pretty woman who is unable to sleep and is strapped to a chair. You have a dying general in a bed, and then you have a young soldier who comes out of the night to check on the status of the general to see if
Mm.
he's been healed, because he begged the old witch to save him, but it's going to come at a price. Um, yeah, I mean, it. I think they do such a great job at the the atmosphere is impeccable. I think that the period accuracy is really really damn impressive.
Yeah.
I was really blown away by so much of this film, and I hope that this is a director that gets
I
recognized
do
for their
too.
talent and is given a bigger budget, because he also made a movie called Gaia, which I
Mm.
saw when it came out, and I remember that being also very artsy.
Mm.
um and if you're looking for a straightforward story, with a very clear cut, beginning, middle, and end, and everything's wrapped up in a tight little bow, and all your questions are answered, and everything makes perfect sense, and you're not left with any questions in the end, then you're gonna hate this
Yeah,
fucking
I
movie.
definitely think that this, I think your comparison to The Witch, like if you do like The Witch, if you like the a period piece, if you like kind of like slowish burn, tensiony,
Dialogue
dialogue
heavy.
heavy. But that's not to say that there aren't visuals and that there isn't stuff that
Oh, the
happens like
visuals are
on screen
fantastic.
that you're like freaked out by, because there are many moments that we like looked over at each other and we're like, wait a minute, like what was that? And this is one of those films that doesn't draw attention to those things. Like there's not any jump scares. It's not like trying to make you notice it. It's just like there's a lot of subtle things and a lot of just like something happens and then you see that thing and you're like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, and it just keeps like the movie just doesn't wait for you to like figure out what that was. It just kind of keeps going along. But
Yeah,
if you
put
like,
away your phone.
yeah, put away your phone, put on subtitles if you need them, and pay attention. But if you like The Witch, I think that this will be a really great film for you.
Probably my favorite visual, which is not even like more stylized. It's something that a character does behind another
Oh my
character.
gosh, yeah,
If I was like on my phone, there's no audio cue
nothing.
for it,
You
right?
would
There's no
miss
jump
it.
scare in the entire film,
No.
right? There's no musical moment that's letting you in, right? As I said, like an auditory cue of like a stinger, or
Yeah.
like a violin or something that's like, playing something screechy that you're like, you look up from your phone like, what is it? Like, people need those auditory cues now, because they're constantly fucking around on their phone or being distracted by everything, that they kind of need the movie to slap them across the face and be like, hey, pay attention to
Yeah.
this scene,
Yeah.
something's happening, and they look
Does
up like,
does not
ding, and you're like,
happen.
what happened, oh, and you're like looking around the phone. Like, if you tried to watch it like that, if you're like kind of on your phone and looking and back and forth, you are going to miss
So many,
everything, because
so many
that's
things.
my favorite moment in the film.
Yeah.
And it was so haunting, because
So,
it's
so
it's
haunting.
never alluded to again, it's never explained, it's never focused on, no one sees it happen, just you, the audience. It's almost like it's your own
Yeah.
private little
Yeah,
glimpse.
the movie definitely has that nightmarish, like dreamlike and fairy tale vibe to it
Yes.
for sure. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that happens that like the character like knows something is like wrong or off or whatever, but there it's so great. It's so great. A lot of like creepy psychological horror aspects in there too, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean again, I think it's probably going to make it in my top As I said, definitely top 10, potentially top 5. It's tough because we've had so many great stuff this year, but I really
I
love
don't know
this
if it's gonna
movie.
make your top five,
We'll
man.
see. I have to go through and
You
look
need
at
to go back and
everything.
look because
I
this
know
year
it's
has
it's
been
definitely
insane.
it's definitely a top 10, I would say, for me. But for sure, and a really amazing witch movie. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's definitely super solid, and it's not going to get any attention. But this is one of those films as to why I do what I do.
yeah,
Now that I've
yeah.
watched, this is like the 281st, I think, is what it is,
So
film.
crazy.
For the year in the horror genre that I've watched from this year that came out this year. Um, and I do it because we found this because of it, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
I would not have watched this otherwise because I literally haven't seen it mentioned. Now it just came out yesterday or a couple days ago for sure, but I can almost guarantee you're not going to hear anybody talking about this film, and that's a massive shame.
Yeah.
And that probably happened with 10 other films this year. I mean, I was like the main person getting everyone to watch Low Lives
Oh yeah,
when it
yeah.
first
Yeah,
dropped.
we love when we find movies like this that are just, maybe will be overlooked by people that we think are hidden gems, and we get to like share them with other people because it's great to like support obviously the filmmakers and everybody involved. But then also it's just like fun to find something that we think is really either scary or just, fun in general,
Yeah.
and share it with other people. So, and I think this is a really good scary one, if you're looking for something that's going to actually like spook you.
Depending on your
At least it
tastes.
did for me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
depending on
It
your
scared
tastes.
me.
If you're into like jump scares and more obvious horror, then I don't think you're gonna like this. If you like more subtle, atmospheric, slow build, creeps into your mind kind of visual horror, then an atmospheric horror, then this is 100% up your alley from the previous titles, that we mentioned. I think you get a pretty good idea of what we're talking about. So, yeah, super cool. Can I, with all confidence, say this is going to make my top 10? No. No, this year is
I
so
know.
crazy. I mean,
I
I've
have
watched
to go
almost
back and look,
300
but
films,
I
though.
just
So, this even
yeah,
making my top 30 is impressive because that would make it in the 10%.
that's
And this
true.
has been a year where I've probably really enjoyed
A lot of them.
70,
Yeah.
80 films where I'm like, in any other year, there's probably films that are going to be in my top, like that are going to be in my 30s that would probably make it my top 10 in another year.
Sure.
Right? This
Yeah.
year is
Yeah.
insane. This is the best year for horror ever.
Yeah.
I've said it
It's been
before,
fantastic.
and Nosferatu hasn't even come
I
out yet,
know.
so
I know. Yeah, you're that's a big one. So we'll see, but
we shall see.
let us know what you think if you watch it, and any other cool witch movies that you really like, because I want to watch more of those.
I'll say this. This is my last piece on this. I'm 100% positive on this one. People are much harder on new films. That is
Mm,
that is 100% positive on that aspect. And what I'm trying to say here is that if this film, this exact same film, came out and just it had a more grainy style to it because of how it was shot back in the 80s. If this came out in the 70s or the 80s and was exactly the same film, people would be all about this film. This would be
mm.
like, one of those
This would
films
be a
that like
cult classic.
hundred
This would
thousand
be
percent. This
like,
would be
yeah,
beloved.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway, all
yeah.
right, check it out. It's on Screambox, so you can
And
either get that
yes,
or Hoopla if you can get a hold of that. I think those are the only places. I don't think it is rentable. I think those are your two options. So, yeah, either way, one is free and one is very cheap. So it's
yes.
it's not going to be too complicated to get to watch this. So
Yeah.
anyway, let us know. We'll see you in the comments. Adios.
Bye.